Welcome to the Urban Food Forest. We are in year 5 of our Zone 6B St. Louis, Missouri Food Forest, where we've got a 5,200 square foot lot that's been completely planted to mostly perennial food crops and lots of tea and medicine and flowers. Take you around and show you some of the things that we're growing. We've got service berries. This is a native Amelanchier canadensis that we're letting grow up in shrub form here along the street. It's an approved street tree here, and lots of native wildflowers that we've planted in along this area where lots of dogs are peeing and things of that nature. It wasn't a great spot for food crops. Then we kind of move up here into the front yard, and we've got we did these log retaining walls because retaining walls are incredibly expensive, and that allowed us to come up 2 feet and turn what was a really sloping front yard into something that is much more manageable. Now we can walk, we can even take the steps up. We've got, this is Roman chamomile along the edge here. Probably not the best choice. It's grown taller and wider than we actually love, even though it makes all that great chamomile. This is thyme, which has worked out a lot better. Lime thyme, creeping thyme, regular thyme. This had been really nice and lush, and we killed a lot of it because this whole row of logs just had to be replaced a few weeks ago because we had these logs rot out after 4 years. So we got a good 4 years out of our first retaining wall. This here is just kind of front yard herb garden where we let all of our neighbors just harvest from this as they like. Nasturtiums and lemon verbena and lavender and dill and fennel and bee balm, St. John's wort, and some asparagus for ornamental value as well as food. We've got a little dwarfing wisteria. We're loving these shallots. These are shallot flowers right now that have been an awesome ornamental. Purple shiso is one of our favorite annuals for the herb garden to add some color. Just last year we planted this royal medlar, which we're excited to check out. Some of the most important tree crops on the property are this Asian pear. It's a Korean giant, and there's another one of those in the back. This is Asian persimmon here. It's a small persimmon. This is the Ichi-ko hero variety. Sometimes I think it's called, oh, now I'm blanking on the other name. It goes by 2 common names, but it's a dwarfing Asian persimmon. We've got kind of this keyhole bed here that we've just lined with salvaged rocks and stuff from the city, and we keep this mostly as an annual bed, except we line it and so many of our other beds with alpine strawberries. We love these alpine strawberries. And we just pulled our peas, and now we've got pole beans coming up because we're kind of in we're in mid-June right now. So peas are done here in St. Louis and the pole beans are coming up. We've got prickly pear cactus, one we're really excited to grow more of. And we had a Cornus moss here that was just growing way too slowly, so eventually we kind of ripped it out and added this jujube. The jujube is something we've been growing in other sites, and it's been a huge winner in our climate. This is pawpaw. Pawpaw is in very little sun here. It only gets a few hours of afternoon sun, and it is grown beautifully. This here is Akebia. There's 2 different Akebia plants that we're using to try to hide our 265 gallon slimline rain tank. which gets all the water off of this roof, and it overflows to the highest point of our property in the front here, which is here. And then this is actually a whole walkable swale that we're excited about. So basically we excavated out all the hard clay soil here so that water flows along here, and then that water kind of sits in a pocket here, and when it overflows it starts to move this way, sits in another little pool down there, and then eventually this whole part of the walkable swale is excavated out pretty deeply, and it sits in that swale, and then when it finally overflows it goes sheets down into the herb garden. And the whole idea there is that the water takes the longest path possible to leave the property, and any overflow from that rain tank slowly moves its way around. We hide that by adding wood chips into the path. So this area of the path has way more wood chips, many inches of wood chips underneath there, whereas this only has a little bit of wood chips here to kind of cover up that height differential, so it's not so dramatic. But the hard clay that's below there, which is ultimately kind of transferring a lot of the water, is at a sloping elevation that takes it around the bend. Let's see. Nice horseradish plant in here, and hardy ginger in here. We use this as an annual bed mostly, but we still are bordering everything with lots of these alpine strawberries still, and just an ornamental moonbeam coreopsis in here. We've got this hardy pomegranate that died back to the ground this winter. That was a little bit of a experiment. We've got red currants coming on. And you can head to the back. You can see in the back, let's talk about rain and water actually first, because that really is a huge part of our design. Right here, we've got this is an 865 gallon rain tank, and we get all that water off of this side of the house here. It comes down, we've got a diverter and a rain head, and that allows water to go down. We took it underground, and then gravity moves it back up. The gravity of I should say the pressure of the water being so much higher up on this side pushes it into our tank. And then we've got this tank hooked up to a little motor that allows us to put it on a hose and water anything in the yard, put it on a little sprinkler, put it on a little soaker hose if we need to do that. And that is kind of how we're handling most of the water that's coming off of that side of the house. So the other side of the house, water is coming up from there and then coming down this gutter, and then we're hard piping it with PVC into this bioswale rain garden, which kind of just looks like a massive jungle. But if you come through here, there's a bioswale that takes you, meanders you over this way into ultimately what is the low point of that bioswale, which is down here, where ultimately it overflows through a rocked overflow that eventually will go to the alley. But we've only had an overflow one time, and the other water that goes there comes off of this carport, comes down the carport, and then we bring it as high in the property as we can by using that gutter, and then that spills out in here, which is also part of that same bioswale rain garden. Hits this little walkable check dam full of rock that holds it back in here for a little while, and then eventually it comes over, keeps flowing, goes around this Nanking cherry here, and comes back to the low point here. So from up there and from here, we've got all the water going into this bioswale in here. Then that really helped influence a lot of our design, because we really needed to manage the water on the site. So this is the north side here, and so we now had this berm on the north side where we've got apple and some gumi berry bushes, pawpaw, and then kind of in front of that, on the south side of some of this stuff, we swapped out another plant that I'm blanking on that wasn't doing well. We changed it out for Girardi dwarf mulberry here. We've got black currant in here, and flowering parsley, echinacea, and we've got in here flying dragon, hardy citrus, hardy orange, and Nanking cherry, as I mentioned before. We've got two carmine jewel cherries, one here and one here, that kind of frame this contorted jujube. You can see all the grapes that are growing along the carport trellis there. We're slowly bringing those vines across the carport trellis. This here is perennial kale. This is the first year we've grown this perennial kale. It's from Experimental Farm Network. So we're excited to see how this does long term. This is one of our annual beds in the food forest, just veggie beds, which we again have lined with the alpine strawberries here. But then we've got greens coming in here that we just sowed, and peppers along the back. You can see the flowers in here. These are all Monarda family native flowers. That annual bed kind of continues to swoop around here. We've got some squash in here and scarlet runner beans coming up. We've got Chicago hardy fig here. We were out of town last fall and we got some really cold weather, and we did not protect our fig in time, so we actually lost a lot of our fig branches. But usually our fig is twice the size of this at this point of the year. But it's okay, because it's a little bit close to this this Asian pear as well, which is this is a Shinko Asian pear, another fire blight resistant variety. And on both of these pears we have grafted many other varieties on with chip buds like this. So you can see that's a chip bud, and so there's probably 5 or 10 different varieties of Asian pear on this one tree. Back in kind of the shade of the pear a little bit, we've got gooseberry, and those gooseberries are starting to ripen all over the place. We love these gooseberries. And we've been rounding out our harvest on all these black currants all along the alley here. We've got black currant bushes that have been ripening the last 2 weeks, and they're some of our easiest to grow, most surefire fruits. They've been awesome, along with the gumis. You can see this is rhubarb in here, looking strong. And this one here has been trampled a little bit from hive management, but this is mint root. Not the regular just spreading herbaceous mint that we use for tea, but the mint root that we dig up for the little roots. This is contender peach tree. We've been able to grow a bunch of different kinds of peach, and contender's been the biggest winner here in our climate. We're slowly grafting on other varieties here, hopefully some hardy almonds onto there as well. Elderberry hedge, giving us some privacy from the neighbor's car area there. This here is This is Nikita's Gift hybrid persimmon. We've got gooseberry understory in here with Mitsuba, perennial purple parsley relative. The Nikita's Gift is really loaded up this year more than ever. We've got tons of little persimmons. And we've also got some understory Gumi still in here. We found that Gumi does fine in shade, but it requires more, but you know, the fruits are smaller and less abundant. This has been our showcase plum tree. This is a 4-in-1 grafted plum that we got from Rain Tree Nursery that's just been amazing. And we have not thinned the fruit nearly as much as we could have because it is so super loaded. It's crazy how much fruit's on this plum, but we are, of course, like all fruit growers, battling squirrels and other potential scoundrels who want to eat our crops. So we keep more fruit load up there just to mitigate some of our risk. We've got our mushroom logs underneath our plum. And we're growing a bunch of different hosta varieties for edible shoots and edible flowers. The spring shoots we enjoy. And then the flower stalks like this, they can also be eaten. You can just break that off like an asparagus and eat this. This is Aronia here. Kind of getting swallowed up by the plum right now. Once the plum fruit comes off, it will be, you know, these branches will spring back up where they usually are. But right now they're so weighted down with all this fruit load. But this Aronia is one of our favorites, and it's a beautiful plant. It's loading up with fruit. Those berries actually don't ripen until way later in the year. Late summer. This is Rosa rugosa. It's kind of hard to see in that light, but it's making tons of big rose hips that we will use for tea. And it's a whole hedge of rose hips here. And we've got another keyhole annual bed. You know, we grow lots of kale in this bed this year. Kale is just a super important plant for us. We eat so much salad and smoothies, and kale, you know, doesn't require planting but more than one time really in the spring. And now that we've got our soil right, it's so you know, we're seeing our kale just super healthy and abundant, and it's taken years to build soil up to the point where our kale's that happy, but it's been really great to have kale in the landscape, to just have greens all summer long. Peas are starting to wither out, and those are about done. And just like in the front, we are gonna get those peas changed out for pole beans, which we really love to have in the late summer. These are the Rosa rugosa. You can see a lot of these are the flowers. They smell absolutely amazing. And then we're putting on a whole show of flowers earlier in the spring. This here is one that we added just maybe 2 years ago. It's beach plum. We got some little tiny baby beach plum, you know, bushes from Oe Coast Nursery, and we only had one spot for them, so we just put 2 or 3 of them in this one planting hole so they can pollinate each other. And here they are here. We're excited to try some of the fruit. They've got a few cultivars, and some of the only cultivars you can find on the market. Let's see. That's mullein, that yellow flower. That's a biennial that we love to make medicine with, and we found it really helpful for earaches specifically, or ear infections. Wow, look at all the bees on that. Holy cow. don't know if you can see that. There's a lot of bees on that plant right now. It's interesting. These gumi bushes, they have been loaded for the last 2-3 weeks, you know, with fruit that we've been picking, and it looks like we just couldn't get to it all. And the birds really helped us clean that out. Thank you, birds, for leaving them for us for a while. This is kind of a bed we keep for some annual veggies, but also like perennial vegetables that we like to give greens to the ducks over here. Talk about them in a sec, but things like lots of Swiss chard, and we actually let the ducks over rummage around in here. We lost a bunch of our sorrel that was in here. We love giving the sorrel to the ducks, and so we're just letting a lot of things flower. Cilantro. This is red veined sorrel or bloody dock. This is a type of lily in here that we are experimenting with. More chard and filling in little spaces with gomphrena. We love gomphrena as a little ornamental annual flower. And we love straw flower, which is that one back there. This is a new one that we're excited about. This is patience dock, which is another dock family perennial vegetable in the sorrel family. And it's definitely not as sour as sorrel. And so I think it's a little bit more palatable as a spring green, even though we love sorrel anyway. This is blackberries, which has maybe been one of the easiest to grow, you know, fruits in the yard. And then we've got kind of blackberries co-planted with hardy kiwis. Hardy kiwis are growing up the porch. You can see all the blackberries. Hang on. And then we got the duckies. Duckies. They don't want to come say hi. But I will say about the ducks is that from the duck pond here, we can release that water, and it comes out of that pipe that you can see goes into the rain garden when we need to refill it. I think that's the whole tour of our backyard food forest here. That's Schisandra vine, the magnolia vine.